Hey folks, I am a fan of the sport of strongman, which is when big strong men lift big heavy weights. And this weekend was one of the biggest competitions of the year with the biggest payout, which is the Rogue Invitational, sponsored by, of course, Rogue. Which you've probably heard of if you're a fan of strongman or CrossFit, or you've ever bought athletic gear. They're a big company, sells a lot of gear. And so they hosted this event with CrossFit, strongman, and some record-breaking events this weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm going to specifically talk about the strongman competition because it had some issues. It had some problems. One of the events was scrapped. A lot of the other events were changed last minute. There were some issues with the rain, and I don't think it was that great overall. So I'll just go in the events briefly. First event was a deadlift tower. It was really cool. I enjoyed it. It was different than a standard deadlift. That was fine. I liked how certain athletes struggled with it because they weren't used to it. That's cool. Second event had some issues. It was a bull pull, basically a sled pull, big wooden sled being pulled on metal slats, and I don't think they tested it enough. Brian Shaw tested it, but initially there wasn't supposed to be a rope. They were just supposed to pull it, but I guess they found out it was too difficult, so they dropped the weight and they added a rope. But even with the rope, only one person finished, Mateusz Kieliszkowski, who went out first. Everyone else didn't finish or didn't come close to finishing, and the people who went towards the end seemed to do a lot worse. So there's speculation that there was increased friction as the athletes used it, and thus making it unfair. I don't know. I think they should have, tested it more. Although Mitchell Hooper, who went close to last, he did pretty well on it. I think he got second. So who's to say? Although Mitchell Hooper is just really good. But still, a lot of athletes seemed to struggle more than they should have on this event as it went along. And Trey Mitchell tore his Achilles heel, so it was pretty brutal. Then there was supposed to be a third event, which was an axle clean and press, which you don't see often. It was close to 400 pounds. That would have been really cool. A lot of athletes trained hard for that and were looking forward to that. I, as a fan, was looking forward to that, but they scrapped that because of weather. I don't know why they didn't bring it indoors, but whatever, they scrapped it. One of the most interesting events, they scrapped it. Okay, so there's the next day, and I started out with an arm-over-arm roller coaster. That's cool, fun to watch. Arm-over-arm, where you're pulling the weight. You're pulling a rope, almost like a rowing kind of maneuver, going up a height, 2 sandbags and a cart. That's fun to watch. That was enjoyable. Nothing wrong with that. The next event was supposed to be initially a Fingal's Fingers into log press, which Fingal's Fingers are big like telephone pole, like implements you have to push up and over. And they scrapped that, I guess, because they couldn't bring those inside. All right. So that event just became a log press for reps, which I did enjoy. But it was kind of, normal. You see that all the time. It was a little boring. But I enjoyed it. It was 360. Could have been a little heavier. There was a rule where you could, rest it on your thighs before you cleaned it. And even if the time stopped, you ran out of time, you could still, if you had it on your, rested on your legs, you could clean it and press it. And the only person who took advantage of that was Mitchell Hooper, which is one of the reasons why he did so well. Yeah. So that event, kind of standard, but I don't think anything wrong with that. Potentially one or two of Mitchell Hooper's reps were a little, there's a gray area between firmly locking out and having your feet planted and waiting a second versus, you're sort of on your tippy toes and it's leaning forward, but you've kind of got it locked out. Maybe one or two of those reps by Mitchell Hooper, he was sort of, instead of just being fully stood locking out, he was a little, but, I think it was all right. There have been a lot of competitions with a lot worse, lockout calls, like World's Strongest Man, for example, this year. But yeah, that was okay. And then you had the final event because the axle clean and press was scrapped, and the final event really sucked. I'm sorry, Rogue, it sucked. It was initially supposed to be like a sandbag carry, multiple sandbags, and it was supposed to be like multiple heats where you'd have everyone go, and then the top 4 or whatever would go, and then the top 2 would go. So you whittle it down, and that sounded awesome. That was basically like a CrossFit event. But they scrapped that, I guess because the field was wet. And so you just had, everyone went just once. And it was really quick because they put the sandbags, they were like 325, 350, 375. So not extremely heavy for strongman, that is. For me, everyone normal would die. But strongman, gigantic, jacked, 300 plus pound strongman, 400 plus pound strongman with Tom Stoltman, they don't have a problem with that. And so basically everyone finished. And they all finished within like a second or two of each other, really. Some within milliseconds, which is not really what you want in an event like this. They put the bag so close to they were supposed to like pick it up and throw it into a hopper. And like the final bag, the 375 pound money bag, was literally like 5 feet from the hopper. So they finished like lightning fast. Each of the 4 that went in each heat, like, it only took like less than a minute for the entire thing. There was barely any time for the commentators to say anything, and then they were done. It was really just a terrible event. Way too fast. Everyone finished. I get maybe they didn't want to make the distances longer because of the wet field, but then maybe you should have brought it inside or something. I don't know. It was a pretty awful last event. And I'm not going to tell you the results of the whole competition. I don't even know the specific results because they didn't post the results on the live stream. They went from ending the competition all the way to the women's events without even showing results and overall scores. So I don't know. This whole weekend was kind of a cluster. And I would hope Rogue, with all the money they have, would do a little better in case it rained. You can look at the weather a week in advance and say, oh yeah, there's a chance it's going to rain on Friday and Saturday. And then you take that into account and you say, okay, how do we, if it does rain, what do we do in that case? But it just seems like they waited until the last minute and then just changed things for the worse. So, it was a fun event to watch overall. Obviously, I didn't pay anything for it. It was free live on YouTube, which I appreciate. But there were issues with the events, for sure. And I would have loved to see the axle clean and press, because that's not just pressing power, but that's cleaning power, and that could have changed the outcome of the events, man. Yeah, so, I don't know. Next year, Rogue, maybe do a little better.